NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, let's go. We got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right in. NBA free agency is already underway, so we got to talk about the first day of free agency. But at first, I want to talk about the NBA draft because the Nets got 5 players when it's all said and done, and I want to talk about each one a little bit. And I want to obviously talk about, you know, the players that the Nets could go after free agency, as well as some of the players they already got and some of the players they lost. So a lot to talk about in this episode. So let's dive right in. I'm going to try to be as fast as possible. I really don't want this episode to go beyond 20 minutes, so I'm just going to focus. So let's first start off about the NBA draft. The NBA draft was just last Thursday, and the Nets, before the draft, made a trade with the Suns, trading Landry Shamet for Javon Carter and the 29th overall pick. This was a little surprising to see. I thought the Nets really liked Shamet. I know I kind of like Shamet. I kind of warmed up to him after a rough start to the beginning of the season. He kind of figured it out, and I thought he kind of was a good, solid rotational player. But when you look at this trade, you say to yourself, I think, you know, Javon Carter kind of fits more of what the Nets are looking for, right? He's more of a defensive-minded player, but can still shoot the three-point shot. Shot 38% from 3. So he's a kind of a defensive wing player, kind of a defensive guard who can shoot the three-point shot and play better defense. So you're really only losing a little bit on the offensive end, losing Shamet, but you're gaining more defensively, and we all know the Nets need more help defensively. So I like this trade. I really do. I think Carter fits better with this team, and at the same time, look, you also can't deny the fact that Carter's a point guard. Like, he's kind of another point guard depth piece. You know, he's kind of, like I said, he's kind of like a hybrid guard, right? Like, he's kind of hybrid point guard, shooting guard, but good defense, can shoot the three-point shot, not overly athletic, but a player who I think could be a nice depth piece for the Nets, because we know that the Nets are probably going to lose Chiozza. I don't know what's going to happen with Mike James, and Javon Carter kind of fits that third-string point guard mold, defensive player who can help them and also knock down the three-point shot. So I like the trade, and the Nets got the 29th overall pick as well in it, so now the Nets are getting another young talent player that they could try to either help them now or build for the future. So overall, thank you, Shamet. Good luck to you. But I think it was a good move and a good trade for the Nets. So anyway, so then we go into the draft. So let's talk about the draft. So now after the Shamet trade, the Nets had the 27th overall pick, the 29th overall pick, the 44th, the 49th, and the 59th. Spoiler alert, if you didn't know already, the Nets did not draft my friend Sandro Mamukelashvili. Just want to go out there and say he didn't get drafted by the Nets. However, he did get drafted 54th overall by the Pacers, and then was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. So Sandro Mamukelashvili, good luck to you, my friend, in Milwaukee. I can't believe another player that I really, really like is playing for the Bucks. Now it's Lopez, now Mamukelashvili, and now I'm just like, damn, I got to secretly root for the Bucks, I guess, except for when they're playing the Nets. So go figure. So Nets didn't get them. That's okay. But the Nets did get some pretty good players that I think might have the ability to either become decent rotational players or maybe a little bit more. So let's focus on that. So with the 27th overall pick, the Nets took Cameron Thomas out of LSU. Now, Cameron Thomas is a scorer. That's who he is. 6'4", shooting guard, can shoot the three-point shot, can make the mid-range jump shot, can finish around the basket. He's just a bucket getter. He's the guy that you say, I'm going to play you 10 to 15 minutes a game, and I expect 10 to 15 points. And he'll get you that. And, you know, it kind of fits right up the Brooklyn Nets philosophy, right? Just offense, 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 right? So he fits what the Nets are looking for, scoring. But in my personal opinion, the Nets don't need any more scoring. But that's okay. It's okay because he's got talent. You know, in my last NetsBoy episode, I talked about how I wanted the Nets to try to get players with high upside. Not just players who could contribute now, but players that might, in a couple years, 2 to 3 years, become great, like good to great players. And I talked about that. That's doable when you draft in the late first round and second round. You just have to, you know, roll the dice and swing and take big shots. And you know, like that. I think Cameron Thomas fits that mold. Cameron Thomas has the offensive skill set to be a future 20 to 25 point a game scorer in this league. That's the reality of it. He was compared to that of a Jordan Clarkson type player. And look, Jordan Clarkson is a 6th Man of the Year candidate. You know, he's a very lethal scorer, can do a little bit of everything. And that's the way Cameron Thompson is. So I really like this pick. I really do. I don't know how much Cameron Thompson is going to make an impact on the Nets to start the season. But I think maybe, you know, he's a depth piece, a guy who maybe could crack the rotation and give the Nets 10 to 15 minutes of pure offense. Why not? I think he's a great player to have in case injuries happen. As we saw last year, he can come in and be the next man up. But so I think it's a really good pick. And you know, honestly, to get him at 27th overall, a player like who could become Jordan Clarkson, if not a little bit more, that's a good value pick there. So I like that move by Sean Marks. And, you know, we'll see how he fits into the rotation. If he can crack the rotation, he might start in the G League. All these players that the Nets drafted might start in the G League, but have the opportunity to move their way up depending on injury and so on and so forth. So Cameron Thomas out of LSU, I like the pick a lot. Then with the 29th pick, they drafted Day'Ron Sharpe. I had to read my handwriting for a second. Day'Ron Sharpe out of UNC. Look, he is exactly what the Nets needed. He's a 6'11", athletic big, who's a good rebounder, who can play good defense, and can be a lob threat, as well as the potential to knock down the three-point shot. Now, I say potential because he didn't really shoot any threes at UNC, but he has always had a good, soft shooter's touch. So the Nets coaching staff believes that he could develop into a kind of a mid-range to possible three-point shooter. But the reality is he's a rebounding big, and we all know how much the Nets need that. So this was a great move. I think Day'Ron Sharpe has the potential to be a rotational player at some point in this season. I think we know that the Nets are going to really use a lot of Nicholas Claxton and a lot of Blake Griffin, who they did re-sign, which we're going to talk about that. But if the Nets can't get another big, I think that, you know, Day'Ron Sharpe could easily be a guy who could get 10 to 15 minutes a game at some point toward the middle season, toward the mid part of the season. I think he could be a rotational player. And he's got all the tools to be a very good young big. And you look at him and Nicholas Claxton, the Nets have two really good young talented bigs that they can develop and basically say, between the two of you, we're assuming one of you is going to be the future. Maybe both, if both really develop well, but, you know, it's just a good piece. Once again, a good value pick, loads of upside. So once again, I liked it because I wanted the Nets to go after these high upside players. And good pick. So good pick by Sean Marks, Day'Ron Sharpe, center out of UNC. All right, and now let's get to the second round draft picks. We're not going to talk a lot more about the second round draft picks because we don't even know if these players are even going to ever be seen on the active roster. They could all be G League players, but you never know. Kessler Edwards, small forward out of Pepperdine. He's considered a bit of a steal. To get at the 44th overall pick, some people think he's probably one of the best second-round picks in the draft because they see him as a legit 3-and-D wing player. And we all know 3-and-D wing players are huge players. They play major factors for everyone. So he's someone who might crack the rotation and could be a depth piece in the future. Look, you know I love the 3-and-D players. The Nets need defense, and they need three-point shooting. So that's a very good pick. So, you know, I think he's 6'7". So he's got, you know, he's kind of, you know, like I said, he's kind of that 3-and-D player that the Nets could always use. And who knows? He could be a player that becomes a rotational player this coming season. I don't know. He doesn't have nearly as much upside as the other players. That pick is more of a help the Nets win now situation, right? Like if the Nets don't bring back Bruce Brown, this guy, Edwards could easily be a guy who could be plugged in and take those minutes. So we'll see what happens there. So Kessler, Edwards, 44th overall pick. Then the 49th overall pick, Marcus Zigorowski. Marcus frickin' Zigorowski. Okay, look. He's a really good player. I actually am glad that the Nets have him. I just personally don't like the guy, okay? I don't like him. Being the Seton Hall alum and fan that I've been, watching Marcus Zigorowski single-handedly always destroy Seton Hall every time he played them when they played Creighton. I hate the guy, okay? I hate the guy because he always kicked Seton Hall's butt. Every time Creighton played Seton Hall, Zigorowski would score like 25 points, have like 7 assists, and just kick their butts and Sandro Mamakilishvili's butt. Like, that's the reality of it. So I don't like the guy. But then I kind of like the fact that the Nets have him now because I've seen how good he could actually be. So when it's all said and done, I actually like this pick. Marcus Zigorowski is just a grit and grind, hard-nosed winner. All right, he's not extremely athletic. He's not a great ball handler. He's not a great passer. He doesn't have a lot of good size. He's like 6'1", 6'2", but he's confident and he's tough and he's not afraid of the moment. I can't think of how many big shots I saw Marcus Zigorowski make in Big East games, and the best comparison to that is Fred VanVleet, also a former Big East player, when he played for Wichita State. Fred VanVleet type of player is Marcus Zigorowski. So I'll tell you this right now. If Marcus Zigorowski plays like a Fred VanVleet, I think every single Nets fan would sign up for that. I know I would. So personally, I don't like the guy, but the only reason why I don't like the guy is because he kicks Seton Hall's butt. So at the end of the day, it's great that he's on my team now. So he could actually become one of my favorite Nets. I don't think he's going to be anything beyond the G League to start, but maybe in a season or two, similar to Fred VanVleet, he might get an opportunity, and you might see Marcus Zigorowski hitting a game-winning shot for the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs or something, because that's the type of player he is. So I actually love that pick. When it's all said and done, I actually love it. All right, 180 on you on that one. Because to get at 49th, a possible Fred VanVleet type player, you got to love it. And then finally, with the 59th overall pick, the Nets got Raekwon Gray out of Florida State. Look, Raekwon is a 6'8" power forward, big guy, big, strong guy, your traditional, like, rebound, tough-minded power forward. A lot of scouts believe he could be a small ball 5, good, decent rebounder, good finisher. Honestly, a lot of teams had him projected to go higher, but unfortunately, he came into the combine pretty overweight. Like, his BMI index was a little bit higher than most that scouts wanted. So a lot of teams were a little afraid to draft him because they're like, oh, no, you could have a weight issue. You may not be the player that we think. But listen, Charles Barkley got drafted, and he had a huge weight issue, right? And look how great he was. Now, I'm not saying Gray's going to be Charles Barkley. My point is, just because a guy comes into the combine overweight does not mean he can't become a great player. I guarantee you the first thing that's going to happen is the Nets are going to set him up with a nutritionist, set him up with a trainer. They're going to figure out a good routine for exercise and eating right, and the guy's probably going to lose 20 pounds, maybe gain some muscle and become even more of a tough, great, low-post player, and that's who Raekwon Gray is. So, look, another good pick by the Nets because, like I said, this was a guy whose talent-wise had him going in the early second round, but because of the weight situation, he ended up going 59th. So, look, all those picks to me, are great picks and fit that mold of what I said. Players that could contribute now, but have upside that could become really solid rotational players on a championship team. And that's the reality of it. All those players could become solid rotational pieces on a championship team with some upside. And Cameron Thomas, to me, has the highest upside. He's got legit, score potential. And I think he could become a really good player. And I think Day'Ron Sharpe could become a really good player. The 2 first-round draft picks, I think, could really become really, really good players for the Nets. And the other second-round draft picks, I feel like, could all be really good role players and depth pieces. So overall, those 5 players, I really like them, and we'll see what happens. All right, that's it on the draft. It went much longer than I wanted. Like I said, I really didn't want this episode to be too long, so now it's time to quickly pivot and talk about NBA free agency. It's currently midnight, Monday night, so it's currently, technically midnight would mean it's August 3rd, but really it's, to me, August 2nd. So the first day of free agency is basically complete. But I wanted to say the time and date of when I'm doing the video in case there's a move or there's a signing that happens that I don't talk about, or I talk about a player who ends up being signed before, people see this video and then people start saying, NetsBoy, that player's not, signed already. I'm just telling you, it's currently 12:02 a.m. on August 3rd, so that's when I last looked at the updates. So the Nets have tons of free agents, okay? And they don't have a lot of cap space, all right? We all know that. They really only have the veteran minimum contracts and the mid-level exception for $5.8 million. So minimum contracts and mid-level exceptions. And then, of course, they can do sign and trades, especially with Spencer Dinwiddie, who I believe the Nets are looking to try to sign and trade because I don't think the Nets are going to be able to re-sign him. I don't know if the Nets really want to re-sign him. I think they'd rather try to sign and trade him. When I think the Nets should as well. Right now, there's 2 players that have been finalized of the Nets free agency. The first one is Blake Griffin, who has agreed to come back to the Nets. Details of the contract have not been disclosed, but it's probably going to be a veteran minimum contract. We know Blake Griffin is still getting paid from the Pistons from the buyout, so this didn't come too much of a shock. So Blake Griffin did agree to come back to the Nets, which is huge. I loved everything I saw from Blake Griffin. He was a huge piece for this Nets team. He played good defense against Giannis. He can play the 4, the 5. We saw his ability. I love it. I love that Blake Griffin's back. I think he's a very good role player. Energy. There's no doubt that this was a great move. I hope it's for the veterans minimum. I think it would be because I really hope the Nets go after some other players with that mid-level exception. But yeah, so Blake Griffin did agree to the Nets, so he will be back, so that's a big one. Now for the bad news. Jeff Green is not coming back. Signed a 2-year, $10 million contract with the Denver Nuggets. So no more Uncle Jeff. I mean, that's a tough blow. I actually thought the Nets had a chance to bring him back by offering him the mid-level exception of $5.8 million. And if you think about it, he could have gotten more per year if he took the exception, because $5.8 million is more than 2 years, $10 million, because it's really 2 $5 million contracts. 1 year, $5 million for 2 years. So I was a little shocked that Jeff Green didn't come back to the Nets, but I think it had to do with that second year. It's a player's option, so it's a little bit more security, so Jeff Green wanted to go that route, so he chose the Nuggets. Also, this kind of makes me believe that perhaps the Nets and Sean Marks kind of have their idea to use their mid-level exception on another player. Maybe Rudy Gobert? Not Rudy Gobert. Sorry, wrong Rudy. Maybe Rudy Gay? Yeah, not Rudy Gobert. Nets can't get him. Scratch that. Maybe Rudy Gay. Maybe Patty Mills, who's a free agent. Those are 2 names I heard up there. Maybe J.J. Redick, because J.J. Redick wants to be a Net, but he also, he wants to be in the New York area because he lives there and his family's there. So it could be between the Nets and the Knicks for J.J. Redick. Maybe the Nets sweeten it up and say, we'll give you the mid-level exception. Maybe that's the plan. So maybe the Nets said to Jeff Green, we're only going to offer you a veteran minimum. Would you like to come back? And Jeff Green said, no, I don't want that. Nets said, you know what? We want to hold on to our mid-level exception. Good luck to you. So Jeff Green is gone. Other than that, the rest of the free agents have not yet been signed. Bruce Brown is a restricted free agent. Nets did offer him a qualify offer for $4.2 million, meaning the Nets can go up to $4.2 million to re-sign him if he chooses to, sign back with the Nets. But if he's offered more and he agrees to go more, the Nets probably will let him go. Tyler Johnson, unrestricted free agent. Mike James, unrestricted free agent. Chris Chiozza, unrestricted free agent. Timothy Dulabu-Cabarro, unrestricted free agent. So these are all players that we could see the Nets go without. And obviously, Spencer Dinwiddie is the big one, who is an unrestricted free agent after he opted out. But a lot of people believe, including myself, Dinwiddie will be signed in a sign-and-trade. And look, he was tied to the Lakers, the Clippers, the Pelicans, the Wizards, and the Mavericks. Those were the 5 teams I heard, and the Bulls. So 6 teams. Well, the Lakers and Bulls are not happening. The Bulls ended up getting Lonzo Ball, and we all know the Lakers made that trade for Russell Westbrook. Like, wow. So scratch those teams off in the point guard market. So to me, it's between the Mavericks, the Clippers, and the Wizards. Though I don't want to sleep on the Knicks, because the Knicks were a team that are looking for a point guard, and they can get Dinwiddie as well. The thing that sucks the most with the Knicks move is that the Knicks have enough cap space to sign him outright, and it doesn't have to be a sign and trade. Those other 3 teams, Pelicans, Mavs, and Clippers, and Wizards, those other 4 teams, they need to do a sign and trade, meaning that the Nets get something in return for Dinwiddie being, leaving them, which obviously we want. So if he goes to the Knicks, the Nets don't get anything. But I don't know if Dinwiddie's really going to sign with the Knicks. I kind of feel like Dinwiddie's kind of spurred on the Knicks, kind of, talked down to them and stuff, and kind of developed a little bit of this rivalry. Kind of like, poo-poo Knicks. That's why I love Dinwiddie so much. But let's be honest, Dinwiddie did say he's, if he doesn't go back to Los Angeles, which is primarily choice, which means the Clippers make the most sense, that he'll basically go where the dollars are. Go to whatever team pays him the most. So I don't know exactly where he'll go. All those teams have package players that are kind of interesting. But the one that I saw most recently is that the Wizards want Dinwiddie and wanted to offer Kyle Kuzma and Montrezl Harrell, who they just got in the Westbrook trade, for Dinwiddie. But the Nets weren't interested in that. But the Nets said they were interested in Thomas Bryant, the center, the young center for the Wizards. And look, I will take Thomas Bryant in a heartbeat. I actually would love it if the Nets could get Thomas Bryant. He's like 25 years old, very good, player, big, can rebound, can shoot the three-point shot. He kind of fits exactly what the Nets are looking for, so I understand why his name came up. The only question is, does Dinwiddie want to sign with the Wizards? And would the Wizards really be willing to part with Thomas Bryant to get Dinwiddie? So I don't really know what's going to happen here. I really don't. I don't know it's going to be exciting, but I don't know what's going to happen. So as long as the Nets get something back for Dinwiddie, I'll be okay with it. And hopefully it helps out a lot. I talked about, J.J. Redick and Patty Mills and, Rudy Gay as players I think the Nets should go after. Brian Forbes is someone that was linked to the Nets as well, the shooting guard who was with the Bucks. There's a lot of stuff out there. And look, I don't know exactly who the Nets are going to get, but I will say this. Losing Jeff Green is a big deal to me. And unless they plan on playing Blake Griffin regularly at the 4, they need to fill that void and get that Jeff Green type of player, which is why I would go after Rudy Gay. Bruce Brown, I don't know what's happening. I don't know. I don't really know. But I will say this. I do think J.J. Redick is a strong possibility. The fact that he wants to be back in New York and he wants to win a championship So the Nets make the most sense. So if I'm the Nets, I would go after J.J. Redick right now, try to get him to sign a veteran minimum contract, and I would offer Rudy Gay the mid-level exception, $5.8 million, and then I would try to trade Spencer Dinwiddie, or hopefully Dinwiddie signs with the Wizards, and then do a sign and trade to try to bring Thomas Bryant to the Nets. So those are the moves that I would do if I'm the Nets. Those are the free agents. I would try to bring back Bruce Brown with the qualifying offer. If a team goes after him and takes him away, then I would move on from that. And the rest of those guys, you know, Tyler Johnson, Chioza, Mike James, if they're willing to take minimum contracts, I would love them to be back, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Luwawu Cabarro, he can just go away. I don't care about him, all right? Go away, Timothy. No one likes you. You were useless. You had like one good stretch. Fly away. So, anyway, there you have it. Okay, video way too long. Thank you for staying with me. Let me know what you guys think about the draft, the players the Nets got, some of the free agencies, what's happened so far in day one free agency. If you agree with me, some of the players the Nets should go after, what do you think is going to happen, all this stuff. Keep your eyes open to the next NetsBoy episode, which will probably be in a couple weeks after free agency and possible after some trades. So we'll see what happens. So keep your eyes open for that. So thank you again for dealing with my rambling. And until next time, let me know what you think is going to happen. And this is NetsBoy, apologizing once again for a video being way too long, and signing off.